Morning, everybody. It's good to see you all made it through the wonderful weekend we had up north here anyways. Great weather, and today's Tuesday, April 13th, and we're got on our schedule to talk with Senator Collmore, Chair of the Senate Education Committee. And we're going to discuss their amendment. And I don't know if it's a strike all, but their amendment to our S-100 Universal Meals Bill. And I think you certainly know everybody on from the committee, Brian, Senator Campion, and welcome to Ag. And thanks for, maybe I hadn't better thank you until after I hear what you're going to tell us, but
that's right.
Certainly appreciate, all the work that your committee and Jim has been doing in regards to the Universal Meals Program. So I think, I don't know if you want to explain that. You and Jim are going to work together, but the floor is yours, and we're glad to hear from you.
Thanks, Senator Starr. For the record, Senator Brian Campion, Bennington County and Wilmington. Senator Starr, if it's okay with you, I'll just give an overview, sort of a high-level overview, and then pass it on to Jim for the details in terms of how we think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
great.
Sounds like a plan.
Great. So the first thing I want to mention, committee, and thanks for having me, is I feel like in some ways could be a work in progress. This is where we're at right now, and I'll take you through it a little bit. But what we're hoping to do is to partner with this committee and hopefully present an amendment together that would address some of the needs that we learned about, and I know that you've all been learning about during this process. And I also want to just thank you all for what I think is moving us in a good direction. I've said this before, but I think it's a good direction for our children who go to schools, to our schools here in Vermont. I also think it's a good direction for our farmers. I think it really does create a level of predictability in markets that haven't existed. And certainly in my county, we have more young people wanting to come and farm, and we have young people farming right now. And I think this kind of predictability around, some level of universal school meals is a big help. So thank you for this. The way that we ended, where we have landed at this point, and we are going to, we'll be eager to hear your thoughts, and we're going to continue on this issue this afternoon a little bit, is we thought it would make sense to start with universal breakfasts, making certain that all of Vermont's children have a good, solid start to the day with a nutritious breakfast. And, some of the evidence that we've seen, and I'm sure you've all seen also, breakfast still is the most important meal of the day. And good food, good nutritious food helps with educational outcomes. We learned where universal school breakfast helps with attendance, getting students to school on time. It certainly addresses and works to feed our neediest children in the state. And it also helps middle income families as well, because what we have heard anecdotally is some families will just say, hey, you're going to eat at school. Why don't you skip breakfast here? Why don't you head to school, have a communal meal with your friends? It's very social, opportunity for kids to kick off the day together with their teachers. And then the agriculture piece that I think we're all very excited about is the increase of nutritious foods in students. I mean, we're hoping this becomes not, a bagel and a little cream cheese, nothing wrong with that, but we're hoping that, again, we're going to be using our farms and farm markets to not only feed children the most nutritious local foods possible, but also teach them about nutrition. And in the long run, I think good habits starting young can help carry kids throughout their lives. And I think we can all talk and speak to our own experiences with that. So again, we decided to go with universal breakfast. We decided, as you'll probably hear from Brianna Parker at some point, that was an estimate from Joint Fiscal of $6 to $9 million. Our suggestion was to take it off of the Ed Fund. And we also are working, as Jim will take you through it, language that gets us to universal school meals at some point. And what it does is it really, we're hoping there are ways to explore different funding options. And I don't know if we're completely settled on where we need to be. And that's one of the reasons I'm glad to be coming to all of you now, so we can maybe work together on some of these final details. But it does, I think there's a lot of information out there, some accurate. And as usual, when you start talking about some of these things, I think there might be some inaccurate information. And I think for us to take our time and figure out whether or not we might be able to benefit from working with our federal delegation in the future around universal school meals. Are there other ways to get to this funding? And hopefully, eventually, we will find funding and really give students that opportunity for universal school meals throughout the state. Some of the pushback I think we've heard, you have as well, is how do you, if our goal is to feed the neediest Vermonters, this going universal might not be the way we would want to go. And we heard from individuals, including the agency, on different approaches. Some of those approaches I'm finding to be particularly complicated, and I think the agency is as well. And so that's why we also thought, let's start with universal breakfast and try this out. Let's see how it goes over the next couple of years. I suspect it's going to go quite well. I think it's easy enough to implement the way it's going to be designed. And I think in the long run, we're going to see a lot of enthusiasm for it. And again, I think there are not only opportunities for this for academic performance, helps with school attendance, but also there are real opportunities to teach. There really are opportunities to teach children about good nutrition. John Dewey, the great education philosopher, said learning by doing. And if you can get kids in the kitchen, cooking, making good decisions around what they're eating with nutritionists and teachers and others around, I think in the long run, we're all going to be better. So that's my overview. I will let, unless senators have questions.
We'll see if any of the committee has questions of Brian before we move through the amendment on your opening remarks, Senator. Senator Pearson.
This is a question for maybe you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Campion. Do we have a sense that this has support from Senate appropriations?
Well, I sit in there, and I know the full, if we'd have gone the full blown position, it was gonna bump up against some rough waters. I think this is like $4 to $5 million, Senator Coleman or Senator Campion.
I think Brianna said 6 to 9, but you're in that ballpark, sure.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a much easier sell. It certainly less money, and I think we talked in there in the other committee in regards to getting the money out of the Ed Fund or off the top of that. And I think, with with all the federal money that's floating to the schools, this is an ideal time to get this started, and hopefully it'll pay dividends and really show its well-being, and we can move forward. I guess the other, on our front, I don't know about the House. I haven't chatted with them. But I think if both committees are in support of this, and we pass it with a good vote in the Senate, it'll certainly put a lot of pressure on both the Ag and House Education committees to move it forward. I also, Brian Campion, Senator Campion, was the Ed Department supportive, agency supportive of your work?
Yes, thanks for that question, Senator Starr, and I should have made that statement earlier. Yes, I feel it's safe to say that Rosie was supportive of this approach. We gave her, we talked through a number of different approaches. I may, Senator, have shared with you and your committee a memo from Rosie. If not, I know Mr. Desmarais can dig that up. And yes, I think overall, she felt that this is something that she could implement and move forward.
Yep.
And I would say, Senator Starr, I would just, if I may, just add that, I feel like this is a good time to come into this committee. You may see after Mr. Desmarais takes you through, there might be some things that you would want to change, and we can take those into consideration, and we can then have a conversation with our friends in Senator Probst. But I do appreciate this process. I know it's been long, but I think this is a really worthwhile goal. And so I think we're making progress.
Yep. Senator Polina?
Hi, Brian. I think from what I heard, I think I know the answer to my question, but I want to make sure you don't have necessarily a date certain for moving towards lunch, universal lunch in the bill, do you, at this point?
I'm going to let Mr. Desmarais answer that, because I can't recall where we fell on that. I thought we did, but
okay.
No, so the answer to that question, Senator Polina, is there's a task force in this bill to advise or recommend how to get to universal school lunch. No date, but just a task force to recommend.
Okay.
so
it would
that's
be
something-
nice. It would be nice to know that we had a date by which we were going to try to make a decision.
Yeah, no, that makes, I think that's, the Education Committee looks forward to the Agriculture Committee's any edits or suggestions. So that may be,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, maybe we could have.
Senator
Jim?
Starr, I'm going to head back to natural resources and energy, if you don't mind. But Jim is, as you know, you're in great hands, and then perhaps you and I can touch base to get a sense of where the committee is.
And so we'll run through the amendment. Were you planning on this to be a strike all proposal?
Well, if we were to do it as a strike all, I think there might be a couple more edits. Early on, senators may recall the Agency of Education did request a language change, and I'm not sure if that's in it. Do you remember, Mr. Desmarais?
So the agency saw the draft I presented to Senate Education, came back over the weekend with a couple of recommendations. Those have not been made in this draft. I will point them out to you as I go.
Okay, great.
Well, and of course, you know, if you're gonna send a bill to the House, you gotta leave something for them to do. We can't send them a perfect bill. And so, but, you know, we can chat about that.
Okay, and again,
Yeah,
Senator
the
Starr,
best-
I think one of the questions that I'll have for you is timing. I could see us collaborating, you know, for a few more days on this, and then if we can get everybody to agreement, we could take a vote at the end of the week in our committee, knowing if all of you and Probst are on board, and get it to the floor, and then get it to the House and have it ready for them to roll on either sooner or later.
Yeah,
Great.
Chris?
Well, I'd like to vote whether or not we want to let Senator Campion leave us. I'm enjoying his company.
Well, I think.
We're
I
probably
think
doing him
we-
a favor, keeping him out of natural.
Yeah, and we're probably potentially preventing other harm from happening. But in seriousness, I hope we can move a little bit faster. It'd be great to
Yeah.
have the Senate finish with its work this week, which would entail moving to take the bill off of whatever status it is tomorrow, so we could vote on a Thursday and Friday. So I don't know if that's realistic, but I just want to put in a plug.
Yeah, no,
to-
thanks. I don't think it's realistic from our end. I mean, we would have to, one of the things we do is we try to give people at least 24 hours heads up that we're going to vote on something. So that would mean our committee may be voting on it tomorrow if we're all in agreement at the earliest, and that puts it on notice on Thursday.
Right. That's what I'm advocating for.
Oh,
exactly.
okay. So I'm thinking you're thinking today. Yeah. So that could be fine if we can all come to an agreement. We could certainly, vote on it sometime tomorrow afternoon. So why don't I wait to hear what good work and suggestions you all have? And then Senator Starr, being the member of Probst, if you want to touch base with the Probst this
Right.
afternoon. And then if everything's a go, my committee can look, we'll look again this afternoon. We might have to look again tomorrow. Hopefully we won't have to look on Friday, but we'll get it out as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, well, your crew, though, your committee is happy with what Jim's gonna present, I take
Yeah,
it.
I think it's safe to
And-
say that 5 of the 6 of them, I'm not sure where the good senator from Rutland, the other good senator from Rutland, Senator Terenzini is, but I do believe that 5 of the 6 are comfortable with this position.
Well, do you know when, if you know when you might take it up for a vote, you know, you could send him down to do an errand for you in another committee, and then you'd have a 5-0-1 vote.
Right,
Right.
right.
So,
Well, the fact that
No,
you've
I-
got Senators Collmore and Parent, I think it'll likely help. So
yeah, that I would hope that would help, and but anyways, I know you wanna get back to your other committee, and we'll we can chat later. I'll try to I won't just try, I'll bring this up to our committee this afternoon,
great, thank you.
and
And then
see what
maybe,
the-
yeah, since chairs has been canceled, maybe we can meet later this afternoon, you and I,
Yeah.
just as a head, you can let me know what direction you want us to go in. So.
I was kind of hoping we were meeting, and then we could bring this up to the other, the other chairs, our game plan, and try to get some support there, but
Well, I think-
we'll talk after session, and Brian.
Okay, but if you get, the chair of Probst and a few people on Probst and this committee and Ed, I think you'll be in good shape.
Yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
count the 16.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Hey,
you very
thanks.
much.
Yeah. Thanks a million. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All those in favor of retaining Senator Campion? Oh, he's crafty. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair.
He ran before we voted, that bum. But anyways, Jim, welcome, and glad to have you with us this morning. And you wanna run through the proposal that you crafted for Ed, and we'll go through it section by section and see what you got.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to share the screen. I assume you can hear me.
I think we all have it on our screens. If you wanted to just go through it, and
Oh, okay.
then
That's
if
fine.
we have a question, we can refer to it off our other screens.
Okay. Okay, so for the record, Jim Dameroy, Ledge Council, we're walking through draft 2.2 of this floor amendment to the report of the Committee on Appropriations amendment to S100. So this is a floor amendment because committees don't have jurisdiction over this bill. So we have unnamed senator or senators moving this on the floor to be determined.
Now, why would that be Committee on Appropriations rather than Agricultural Committee?
Because I believe the last committee to deal with this was Appropriations. They had the jurisdiction. So they amended your bill. And so now we're amending, this would amend their report.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
So we have a new title, first of all, called Expansion of School Breakfast and Lunch Programs Act. The purpose is twofold. First, to provide universal school breakfast for all public school students at no cost to the students or their families, with funding provided to school districts from the Education Fund. And two, to establish a task force to advise you how to achieve the goal of providing universal school lunch for all public school students at no cost. Thereby making school food programs universally available to all public school students at no cost.
Any questions on that first section from committee members? And we can kind of come back anyways, but if you do have a question for Jim as we roll through this, raise your hand or speak up. Okay, Jim?
Okay, we're on page 2, section 3, which are changes to the school food programs subchapter. And before I go through this, I'll mention one thing, which is there's a lot of conversation and language around in previous bills around reporting, around household income forms, around the whole issue about making sure federal funds are available. You won't see that in this draft because you're not moving to universal meals. You're only moving to universal breakfast. So those forms that are used today will still be used going forward at this stage. So to go through section 3, the changes in the definitions are technical changes, so I won't dwell on those. You've seen them before. On line 15, section 1262A is the award of grants section. C1 is existing law, and that's where the state pays for the reduced part of free and reduced lunches or a meal. So that's a state contribution for reduced price meals. That's unchanged, but we're adding on page 3, on line 3, a new subdivision 2. And this is where you get to universal school breakfast. So it says, from state funds appropriated to the agency for this subdivision. The agency shall reimburse each school district that made available school breakfast to students at no charge under a subdivision we'll come on to for the cost of each meal actually provided in the district during the previous quarter, to the extent that cost is not reimbursed through federal funds or other state funds. And then B says that this reimbursement amount shall be paid from the education fund. So before I go on, I do want to pause.
Yeah.
I do want to pause to mention an agency comment on this. So Rosie got back to me in this section, and she said the way this is drafted has reimbursement for the cost of school breakfast that's not already covered by state and federal funds. She recommends changing this to what you had earlier, which is to say what will be reimbursed is the cost of a paid lunch minus the cost of a reduced price meal. Because if you do it by cost of the school district, they're going to vary broadly how much they charge, what their cost is for serving breakfast. But if you use the paid breakfast as your marker, they'll make it uniform. So she recommends going with the language you used earlier on this section.
I think that makes sense, but we'll talk about it, Chris.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Was there a reason the draft didn't do that?
We have various drafts going around. I had this iteration, I had that iteration, and I use this one. So my choice really is which draft to use. So this does leave some cost at the school district, obviously, because if their cost is higher than the paid rate, they'll have some cost left over. So the difference between the two is some cost will be left over with the paid rate used. The version you have in front of you now, there'd be no cost left over for the school district to pick up.
So
It'll be more complicated.
This is a cost containment strategy.
Yeah. But this would be more the way they're doing it today. It would be, wouldn't it be easier for the school districts to manage this system rather than, I mean, the system we were just talking about that Rosie suggested than this new system that we're putting in the bill?
Yeah, I think Rosie thinks that. From my email
Brian?
correspondence with her, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jim, if you go to line 7 and 8, I'm just on that same page. The cost that is not reimbursed through federal funds or other state funds. What are the other state funds that we're talking about there?
Well, this language will change based on our conversation just now. So this language will be changing. But what that refers to is you have the feds paying for free lunches. You've got free breakfast and free lunch, right? Keep it with breakfast for a minute. You got the feds paying for free breakfast. You've got the state kicking in the parent portion for reduced price breakfast. Okay, so free breakfast is poverty level. 185% of that is reduced price lunches, and the state kicks in the parent portion of that. Right. So this references that state reimbursement of reduced price lunches.
Okay,
But
we're
this
going to
week-
change.
We'll be changing it anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So what would you like to do? Would you like to incorporate Rosie's language in there? I see heads nodding.
I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, so you want to make that change,
Yep.
Jim, or
Yeah.
Corey, are you all okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, we're all set.
Okay. Going down to line 13, section 1264 food program, the first subsection A1A, you've seen this over and over again. This is basically the language around providing free and reduced price meals and requiring them to be offered in each school and requiring school districts to maximize federal funding. So that you've seen before.
And
Yep.
if I could just ask, this is a change in that we're not requiring that, you know, when we started this, obviously we were going to require free meals, but even just requiring meals is a change from the status quo. Is that right?
No.
I thought there were a few schools that didn't supply food.
They might on some exemption, I guess. I'm not sure about that, but this language in A1A has been here for, I'm not sure how long, but it's
Okay.
existing language, except what's been marked up. So the
Okay.
existing language says that they have to offer school lunch and school breakfast as provided for students who qualify. That's existing language.
All right, never mind. Thank you.
Been clarified a bit, but yeah. What is new though is on page 4, subdivision B on line 3. Now it says in addition to covering free and reduced, each school board operating public schools shall cost to operate within each school in the school district the same school breakfast program made available to students who qualify for free and reduced to each student, to each attending student every school day at no charge. So that's where you get the requirement to offer universal school breakfast.
But they're already doing the meals program within the school, right? And
Yeah.
this is allowing them to participate in the free breakfast program.
No, B is requiring them to expand their program, expand their free
Oh,
breakfast
to-
and reduced to universal breakfast.
Yeah, and it won't cost them anything, so I don't know why they wouldn't. If it's free, I wouldn't think a school district would be opposed to this if it wasn't costing them anything.
It might cost them something because the reimbursement we just talked about a minute ago would be the difference between paid and reduced. Therefore, if their cost is higher than the paid cost, they'll have some residual cost.
Well, I wouldn't think they'd whine too much about that, but I mean, they will, but I don't know why. So any questions on that? All set? Or Brian, you look like you're trying to figure out a question.
No, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what's going on. Because I know in the end, someone's going to walk up to me and say, how much is this going to cost me in taxes? And I want to be able to have
Oh,
an
in
answer.
fact.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know if we'll ever get that answer or won't be for a while because of, but don't we want the schools to do this? And if we want them to do it, it should be in the bill. Did you have a question or anything, Chris? Or
Well, I was just going to say we're more closely paralleling the language we had, except for just limiting it to breakfast. And so the fiscal note that we've had is the range of 6 to 9 million. for breakfast. And it's worth reminding everyone that the Ed Fund has a $17 million surplus right now. Jim, does this draft entertain a phase in?
No. According to Rosie, I shouldn't speak on her behalf, but she did testify in this, and I have corresponded with her on this. She can implement this for next fall. And when I asked her, can school districts implement this for next fall, she thought that they could. So it would be effective on passage.
And they're already doing it. And we think there's some odds that the feds will just extend that anyway.
Oh, this year, yeah. And we've got that built in there that it wouldn't cost anybody anything, you know, you utilize federal funds first, so. So, hey, Brian, you can tell your people if the feds continue, it ain't gonna cost them a nickel.
Okay, Bobby, I'll tell him you told me that. I was assured by Senator Starr.
Oh, yeah, that'll get you shot for sure.
That's
no,
good for
I-
a few less votes.
Okay, Jim, continue.
Okay. So the rest of this language you've seen numerous times before. It's your language. Line 8 on page 4 requires school districts to aim to achieve the highest level of student participation. So grab and go, having food in the classroom, collaborating with the school wellness community advisory council, and planning meals. That's your language from before. And then D and E is language in the existing statute around local foods. You've done is move the day out by 1 year in terms of the goal of having 20% local. And on page 5, all you've done is to clarify the reporting requirement. But you've seen that before. The strikeout on page 5 of section 1265 strikes out the ability for school districts to get an exemption for 1 year from offering school, food programs. That was in your bill before. Section 4 is new. So on page 6, line 14, this allows the education fund to pay for the universal school breakfast. So this is another use of the education fund that's being authorized. Page 7, section 5, you've seen this before, it's your language about counting time spent by students consuming school meals as instructional time. I would propose moving this though from session law into statute because it's not a temporary thing. So if it's okay, I would put that into statute as opposed to session law.
Yeah.
The appropriation, section 6 is new. It's the appropriation for school meals. This is where your $6 to $9 million figure would go. And it is an education fund expense, obviously. Section 7, ignore that entirely, please. That is unnecessary at this stage. So I won't bother to explain it to you unless you want me to, but it's unnecessary language. That was there in case this was going to go into effect about the other date, but at this stage it's going to affect this year, so no need for section 7. Section 8 is the requirement that the agency consult with various organizations on the impact of the act and to report back to you on December 15th of this year. Section 9 is around staffing for the agency. This is for Rosie. She has said that she does need the staff to implement the universal breakfast program. The appropriation is from the general fund. There was conversation in Senate Education as to whether ESSER funds could be used for this. but I've clarified with the agency that no extra funds can't be used for this. It has to be.
Did you have any conversation with Rosie or anyone at the ed agency? They, at one point, they were gonna move some staff around that was doing a job that they didn't need done any longer, and they were gonna move that position to this position. Was there any comment in any other committees in regards to that deal?
Well, I think what you're referring to, Senator Starr, is that the agency would like to restructure around homeschool programs and change the regulations and the statute around that to have a lighter regulatory oversight of that area, which would free up staff for other things. I don't believe that Senate Education is taking that up. So I think they've discussed it, and I don't believe they're going forward at this stage with that proposal.
With the reorganization?
Yes,
Because we talked about that and saving that 100 grand, at the agency, but if so, you don't, is that bill in Senate ed or House ed?
there is no bill. There is a suggested language from the agency that has not been drafted into a bill, and it's with Senator Campion.
And no action then?
I'm not always there for every meeting, but I have seen no action on that yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked over about adding the extra person and that's what I believe it was in there. I think they even talked about that in our room, right? And then they did again, the agency talked about that, how they might not need this position and that money. So that, you ought to put a question mark by that, Jim, and when you meet with education this afternoon, ask them that we had a question on that, why they weren't doing the reorganizational change and move that position over to this position.
Okay, I will.
And
I will.
I'll mention it to Brian when I chat with him.
Okay. Yep.
Any questions from Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jim, if we can go back to section 8 on page 7, is it normal for us to identify a nonprofit like Hunger Free Vermont to be part of a report? I noticed they're in both the consultation report, if you will, and also the task force. The others are sort of standard, Superintendent's Association, Principals Association, all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's not uncommon. I mean, we often name for a task force, we often name various private sector nonprofits to be involved in the task force. In terms of the use for consultation here, I don't think it's unusual to consult with a nonprofit. So it's really up to you as to whether you want them to be involved in this.
I think what Brian, well, I don't know, but does this Hunger Free Vermont take in all those groups that we hear from, Farm to Plate and all them? Does Hunger Free Vermont take all those people in to be part of the overall organization? Do you know, Jim?
I don't know the scope. I'm sorry.
What about, do you know about that, Chris?
I know, I think they're part of the Vermont Feed Coalition. Is that what you're
Yeah,
referencing?
Vermont Feed, and I mean, there's quite a few different
Well, I
little
think,
splinter groups.
yeah, no, NOFA and Shelburne Farms and right, all of them. I don't think, I think I'm looking for the phrase here. I think Hunger Free Vermont is its own organization, but they are the others are more about farm to school, but they're
Yeah.
all in a coalition. So I think we're fine with this language, and then if we got it wrong, they'll let us know.
They all are part of Hunger Free Vermont. That,
Well, the Vermont Feed is a coalition that includes Hunger Free Vermont, but they are a coalition. And in terms of the universal meals piece, I think Hunger Free Vermont is the right entity to put at the table, and we'll just have to trust that they're getting input from their coalition partners.
Vermont.
So why would not the Agency of Ag be included there?
Well, this is about getting to universal lunches. So, it's not, so I don't think ag has a role to play, but I don't feel
Right.
strongly about it.
They are included on the task force, I think. Let me scroll down.
Section 8 is about just reporting on implementation of the act. Section 9 on section 10 on the task force is, so the membership of the task force is the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Human Services, and Secretary of Agriculture.
So we got ag in there doing that. See, that crew up above will only issue a report, right?
Yeah,
It's-
and there's another group down below that on line 14 on page 9. It looks like it's the same group again in that collaboration piece. In performing the duties, they'll collaborate with Hunger Free Vermont, superintendents, school boards, et cetera, et cetera. So they're in there again. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Well, think about it. And if we have a question, we'll raise it to the Ed Committee. Okay, Jim?
Okay. So we have a section 10 is a new task force on universal school lunch. So section 8 creates the task force. Its main duty is to make recommendations on how to achieve the goal of providing universal school lunch for all public school students at no cost. Membership we talked about, it's the Secretaries of Education, Human Services, and Agriculture or their designees. The task force powers and duties are to recommend how to achieve this goal. And then specifically on page 9, there are 4 tasks. First, recommend funding sources for universal lunch. 2, recommend what data should be collected by local education agencies, school districts, and schools to qualify for federal funds based on student poverty, the means by which the data should be collected, the frequency of collection, and how this data should be reported to the Agency of Education, and the frequency of this reporting. 3, consider how other states offer and fund universal school meals at no cost to students or their families. And 4, meet with Vermont Vermont federal delegation to discuss what changes could be made to federal law and regulations to more readily facilitate universal school meals. And then as
That's
mentioned,
where it should be coming. That's where the money should be coming from. Hopefully it will eventually.
collaboration here is with Hunger Free Vermont, superintendents, school board, special educators, and principals association in Vermont NEA. The report is due January of next year to you, are you here? Yes, you are. To you, yep. And then usual language about meetings. And that's it. Effective date is on passage.
Is that on or before the 15th of January? Is that a realistic date for that info to be coming back? What's the committee, any preference on that, Brian?
Thank you, Bobby. I was wondering, since they're not going to be constituted until August 1st, that's 5 months, but they're meeting 8 times. Is that, I don't know if that's a lot or not enough or just enough. So in other words, they're going to have a 5-month existence, but they need a report out by January 15th, and they're allowed
Well,
to meet 8 times.
what I was thinking too is if the feds come through and and offer the free breakfast and meals through this next school year of 22, if we gave them more time, they could do a more thorough job of putting, you know, the answers together to these questions, and maybe would even learn more, but, and, you know, I think it could be done a little later, but Chris?
Well, I guess I don't see this group as needing a lot of strategic, there's not really policy mysteries or strategic mysteries. There's sort of a coalition potential, right? I mean, there's only one hurdle, and that's the money. No, there's no other real obstacles. And so I don't know that we need more time. It would be my hope that people, a broader coalition of people learn the details and come together to back it. I mean, I just don't think there's a lot of trying to wrestle through the policy. I mean, we've done it in 3 months, and the hurdle's the money.
So do we need the 8 meetings in there, or?
I mean, I don't think we want to pick a fight on those details myself, but.
No. So, so we'll leave that the way it is. You're working us right out of a job here, aren't you, Jim? So we're down to,
I think Anthony has a question, Bobby.
oh, hi, yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
It's not really a question. I guess I'm not feeling inspired by this task force. I mean, I don't have a better idea, quite honestly, but I'm a little afraid that nothing might come of it in a timely way. I mean, I had hoped that a task force would be charged with coming back with a plan to fund lunches within a certain amount of time, not come back with the plan in a certain amount of time, but get lunches funded, implemented as universal meals within a couple of years. I don't want them to come back and say, well, it's going to take 10 years to phase this in. I would like to set a hard goal that says we want to implement the lunches by within 3 years or most, something like that. It just makes me wonder. I just want to set it up in such a way that we can feel confident that it's actually going to come back with a real plan, not just some recommendations. So, like I said, I don't have a better idea. I'm not putting a better idea forward. I understand that, but I just don't feel like inspired by having the 3 agency secretaries make recommendations when they should have been doing this on their own a while ago. So, like I said, I don't have a better idea at the moment, but that's my concern, if that makes sense.
Well, couldn't we add an additional charge of they shall report back on when this should be implemented or a date certain?
Yeah, or something
that
like
what
that,
you'd
like,
like?
that we want them to, we want the task force to come back with a plan to implement universal lunches within 3 years. I'm making up the 3 years number, I'm not saying it has to be three, but the whole idea about compromising and being willing to go with breakfast first was that it would lead us eventually towards lunch as well. I don't want them to say, well, we're doing breakfast and that's all fine, so we don't have a clear recommendation for implementing lunch. Maybe it'll take 5 years, maybe it'll take 10 years. We're not really committing to it. I think that if we're compromising in a way, and the advocates, the hunger advocates are compromising by accepting a move towards breakfast to begin with, we have to be pretty certain that it's going to result in lunch as well, and not just end up feeling that we're drawn off course by the implementing the breakfast and not necessarily doing the lunch. So I would like to say that they should come back with a plan to implement lunch within, no more than 5 years. I mean, that's how long it was going to be phased in before in the earlier bill, right?
Yeah, 5. So, yeah, but would you do that with, one of them, like 1 through 4, one of those numbers, or D and E and in that part of it, where would you put that language in?
I mean, I think it would be around where the 1 through 4 is. It could be number 1, recommend funding sources to fund universal school lunch within 3 years or whatever. Just put a date there, put a time certain that, I don't want to come back and say, we're willing to do this, but it's going to take us 20 years to make it happen, and particularly not to be weird about it, but you're talking about 3 agency secretaries who work for a governor. I'm not saying this governor particularly, but I'm just saying you don't know who it's going to be. Whether it's a governor who's going to feel inspired to move this along, or it's just a governor who's not going to be interested in moving it along. It just seems to me to leave a lot of it to chance. So it could be one of those 1 through 4 things. It could be meant to put in a date by which we want school lunches to be made universal.
So you want to add it in number 1, or offer? Well, what about number 3 even?
Okay.
Yeah, it could be, or it could be higher up, but we talked about the task force creation. Shall make recommendations on how to achieve the goal of providing universal school lunch for all public school students at no cost within 3 years. It could be part of their, I don't know whether that's their charge or what you call that, but where it says created.
So that is 3, something that the committee would support, or would you want to go a little longer?
I'd go 5 since that was in our original bill.
So, any strong feelings either way? That was in our original bill. I mean, the big thing is to get it done, but get them working toward that. They'd have a goal there, at least.
I'm sorry, where do we want to change the 3 to 5?
No, there isn't. No, we'd write a new, Jim would add some additional language up just above in the task force language.
Or it could be in powers and duties, which is the bottom of page 8. The task force should make recommendations on how to achieve the goal of providing universal school lunch for all public school students at no cost, et cetera, within X number of years. I'm not opposed to saying 5 since that was in the bill. I'm just antsy to put something in there.
I'm happy to put in a date, but I also, sure.
So have you got that, Jim?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're agreeing to 5 years or 3 years, so just give me
Well,
that.
put 5 in, and if Ed wants to change it back to 3, well, we'll have a little discussion, but we talked about implementing it over a 5-year period, and so that would be consistent with our previous thinking.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Other questions from the committee on any of the rest of it? Effective date's fine. And we've got it built, or they've got it built in earlier that as long as there's federal funds, this would not, I guess it'd become law, but it wouldn't kick in. They'd utilize the federal funds.
Can I
Any
just want
other-
I just want to finish, I want to express this one last thought again before Jim writes the new language about the 5 years. Clearly, if they could do it with sooner, that would be fine. I just don't want it to be any longer than 5 years. You know, no later than 5 years. But if they can do it in 3 years, that'd be even better.
Oh, well, we could put that in.
I'll just say no later than 5 years. I don't know if I'm saying I got the right grammar, but we want to implement school lunches within no more than 5 years.
That's certainly pretty clear.
Okay. I'll let it go for now.
It would be pretty hard for them to argue to not do it, but they do that to us all the time, Anthony.
Right. They could come back and say, gee, we can't do it within 5
Oh.
years. Here's a plan to do it in 6. And we
Yeah.
could talk about it. But I just don't want them to just sort of dilly-dally and not come back with anything, for 10 years.
Well, we might never make it, our guy my age might not make it around to see it implemented.
True that.
Any other questions or things that you guys feel that we should change before we send it back to Brian? No, I guess everybody is content with the language. Are you all set, Jim?
I am, yep.
Yeah, and you're feeling better?
I'm feeling better. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, well, that's good. We missed you last week there and was hoping you'd get better and be back with us. So thanks a lot, Jim.
Could I just ask,
Chris?
did we lose the ed language that they wanted? Doesn't matter to us so much, but Sarah Campion had mentioned that there had been an amendment that the agency wanted, right, on the data and things like that. Maybe it's not relevant anymore.
We talked, it was on the comment that Rosie made around the paid versus.
Okay, that's the only one. But 2 weeks ago, there was other language that we'd all agreed to, and I want to make sure that's not lost. It was about data collection and some of those they were very minor. They were sort of technical corrections. Maybe they're not relevant anymore, but.
Well, I think the data parts of this are falling away in this draft because you're not going universal yet.
Okay.
Right, and task force is looking at that question, how to update forums and get that information. That's one of their duties.
Okay. The only other question is for you, Mr. Chair, and that is local purchasing and the incentive language. I'm just nervous we'll forget about that. And so that's really
Well,
a budget question, I guess.
If we can get this going, we should meet with, or I will meet with Carolyn and have her, I mean, they need to do some lifting on this as well. And they could throw that back in, over on House Ag. They're big over there on working lands and helping the small farms out. They put all kinds of money into that, and I think if we can get this part done and get the heavy lifting done with the cost, of the required cost of breakfast, they ought to be able to get a little bit a little bit lifting done to throw the local foods in there.
There is language in there, Chris, about it being a goal, but you're talking about the specific incentives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jim or on the issue before us? And hey, Jim, when you get that drafted up, could you send us each a copy of the new language with the changes?
Oh, of course, yep.
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 Okay. Any other questions, guys? If not, thank you very much, Jim, and we'll look forward to getting the updates from you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think Mike Schneider is with us in regards to 88. The current use stuff. Linda's there. He is. He is still with us.
Greetings.
Yes. Hi, Michael. Been a long time. You haven't been around all winter. Where you been?
Just been right here. I don't go very far.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I popped in a couple times with you, but yeah, I miss working with you guys. Just and not seeing anybody around either. So yeah, we're cranking.
Yeah. So we've got the current use bills in from the tax department. And we hooked those two bills together. And we wanted to make sure that to get your input to make sure it wasn't going to have any adverse effect basically from you. And if it might even save a lot of people from getting bounced out and then having to appeal,
Right.
and save you a lot of work. So that's why we invited you in, Michael.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that and your awareness of those potential implications and wanting to make sure we were aware and okay with it. Yes, indeed, we worked with our colleagues and friends at the tax department on this and collaboratively, and the piece about, making it clear how a solar installation on a relatively small piece, less than 1/10 of an acre, could work without running afoul of everything. We worked with them on that and settled on this language, and we do support it, see it as a good thing, and using this approach, it's actually different than what was first considered. They responded to a concern we had, and so we're good with this approach, but I am a little bit with sort of hat in hand, tail between my legs. I'm not sure how to express it. We should have caught this earlier is what I'm saying, but there is a potential glitch. I have a proposed solution. So I'd like to run that by you. It's simply that in the current proposal, the way we're dealing with this would be to work with the term development to show that it shall not include this solar installation, right? So long as, how does it say that? Provided that the underlying land qualifies under this category as ag land, or that the open land qualifies under this chapter as managed forest land. As used in this subdivision, open land means, and then it goes on to define it. And this is where we suggest doing this fix. But I would request, if possible, could we stay silent in the statutory language on the definition of open land and instead refer to our standards. In current use, the commissioner has authority to establish program standards, and we have a definition for open land that I'd rather you pointed to, rather than set up two different definitions of open land, thereby setting us up for confusion and possible snags in the future. So I appreciate, and I'm sorry that this is like another step, but I hope that this is it's a significant issue, but maybe a fairly simple solution if you're willing to entertain it. I hope I've explained that well. It would just simply say, as used in this subdivision, open land has the same meaning as defined in the minimum acceptable standards for forest management. That's what we have created, that along with many other standards for management and et cetera, and eligibility and current use. So rather than I totally agree with the approach to say if it's in this open land category, but just rather than defining it here, pointing to our existing definition of open land. That's my request.
Yeah, we'd have to, you have that language already printed up. If the committee agrees, we could have you send that to our drafts person.
Right.
And Abby,
Pepper?
yeah.
Okay.
And would that be agreeable with the committee members? Anthony?
I'm just assuming that the result would be the same, Michael. I mean, we're changing the
Yeah.
line. I understand what you're saying about referring to some existing language, but I just want to make sure it's not going to really change the intent of what we're doing.
Right, thank you. And I feel the same. If Abby notes somehow that it does, then I'll withdraw it. I don't want to do that. We're part of creating this solution, want to go with it. And I did talk with Jill and Rebecca at Tax, and they said they get it and they appreciate it and are good with us requesting this change. So yes, it's my intent is to make this switch without any impact on the overall goal here. If Abby signals that that's a problem, I'll stop. But that's the intent. It's just to make it simple without gumming up the whole the objective here.
Linda, are you on?
Yes.
Do you know is there some quick way you could give Abby a call and see if she's just sitting at her desk and could hop on?
Sure, I'll check.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, I
we
apologize. I
don't
want to be.
We're gonna
I'm sorry.
keep you on here and make sure that you're being straight with us, you know.
Always, yes, I'm fine with that. And I feel, I do, I want to be clear that this is something I should have caught. And I just didn't when we were kicking this around and proposing it. And it was only yesterday going, I got to go in with these guys tomorrow. What am I doing? And I looked at it and I said, oh boy, I think I didn't realize they were different. So I apologize.
Screwed up one more time. It didn't.
One more time.
succeed.
But I'm glad to know you're
How
not
you
keeping.
doing with your bridges and your river brook crossing bridges and all that? Is that working fine?
Very popular. I think we've received good funding. We've put a lot of them out the door. People are happy, making use of them. I think it's good. I think we've probably quenched the need right now, to be honest with you, which is good.
You caught up. Yeah.
We're not hearing people requesting additional or other, so I think we're in a good place. I mean, a lot of things have been a little abnormal, as you know, but for near as we can tell, very well.
We haven't noticed anything abnormal.
No.
We got a bigger committee room now. We can get 8 or 10 people on the screen at once.
Right.
Yeah. No, so that's good news, Michael, that's worked out. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael, I just want to know, when you discovered you were going to be with us today and you looked, did you really say, oh boy?
It might have had a little more color to it.
Yeah. Hey, another issue while we're waiting for Linda to come back, the Rygate power plant, Chris and his other committee, they've extended the life of that for a couple of 3 years. Have they, and that's a major, chip place for our low grade wood to go. Have they talked with you or ACCD about any plans to utilize that extra heat to try to get that extension moved out further?
Yes, in a word, nothing substantive of late, given the legislation, when it was being discussed, they expressed an interest. I'm ready to try to help. Several other ideas have emerged as well. And then I was in House Energy and Technology last week testifying on it. They've taken it up. And so as I understand it, the owners and their lobbyists are good with what you all did, and they're asking the House to go with that. I'm still asking for some attention to making sure that whatever subsidy goes to the plant's owners, that it extends through to the suppliers, the loggers and the landowners principally, that they're getting a price that's fair and covers their cost of production. And that's been an issue. As important as it is in the rural economy, it's got to be legit. And so I've asked for that. And I don't have a great answer like how to make that happen, but we're working on it. I'm happy to try to work with them to it. And I guess this language calls for us to work with ACCD on a contingency plan should they not meet the charge.
What about what? Is there any need like for a dry kiln or anything like? I mean, I don't know the wood business like you probably do, but there's got to be some usage for that heat and to be able.
I think that's right. There's been, and kilns is an area of need. We've identified many possible uses of the waste heat.
Oh.
It's a matter of, do they sync up with the site, the facility, the site, the owner's wishes, I guess. I mean, because they've got to have somebody who they got to have a going concern with a kiln project or a pellet facility or hothouses or whatever it might be. But would like, as I've said repeatedly, we would not be supporting the construction of a facility just like that today at that level of efficiency. We'd much rather see combined heat and power, and et cetera, and that exists. But we're talking about a specific case of an existing plant that's playing a very critical role as kind of a bridge to what I hope will be a modern forest economy that includes a new energy economy. So it's been challenging to have to speak to it because it's not great, and we really need to just not waste 75% of the wood that goes there. That's silly.
Yeah, I think Abby's with us. Lynn, is Abby? Yeah, Abby is with us. Good morning, Abby. Sorry about the short notice, but we're trying to, we're working on H88. And Commissioner Schneider has a suggestive change that, half makes sense and or maybe a quarter. Don't want to get too high. He'll pull a trick on us or something. But anyways, Abby, we may need you to change the language a little, and I wanted Michael to explain it, what he would like to see, and then make sure that it will blend into the rest of the language, in a more simplified, better way to deal with the issue. So Michael, you want to run through that proposed change for Abby and the rest of us to hear again?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thanks for that. And hello, Abby. This is in regards to the portion that is speaking to the 1/10, less than a tenth of an acre for a solar development, and using the definition of development as kind of the mechanism that it shall not be development if, et cetera. And it goes on to reference open land, which is a category in the managed forest land category. We're good, by the way. I want to start with, we were part with tax to create this approach, and we're quite good with it, and we're eager to see it happen. I caught, apologizing that I only caught it yesterday, and I should have caught it earlier, that the way it's written here in the proposed language, it creates a new definition of open land. And I'm acknowledging or signaling that we have one in the commissioner standards and would rather just have this language rather than create a new definition in statute, point to that. And so something to the effect of, as used in this subdivision, open land has the same meaning as defined in the minimum acceptable standards for forest management. And I just don't know if that's kosher, if that can work, and the committee seems to understand it, but we wanted to make sure that, I will withdraw it if you say that, like, no, that gums up everything else, or there's no legal mechanism to do so. It seems to me we've done it in other contexts, so I'm hoping that this could work. Does that make sense to you? My
Yes, and
explanation?
thank you. That's great. Thank you. For the record, Abby Shepherd, Office of Legislative Counsel. This statutory definition was taken from that use value manual. I would just like to confer with Michael O'Grady to see if he has other examples of doing that, having statute refer to regulations as the standard. I think off the cuff that would be fine. That way, as the department is updating that, it would pull in that reference automatically, but I would like to just run that by him, as this is more his subject.
Right. Well, that sounds great. Thank you. And just to be clear, yes, it was clear that someone used our language, but it's not the exact language. So like it references the time of restocking. The other one doesn't. One references Site 4 category lands, the other doesn't. So they're just not exact. And that's the issue, is just to leave it. There's a reason why the General Assembly has given the commissioner the authority to create those standards and kind of make those regulations. But we want to keep that and not have, certainly don't want them to compete or be different. So that's how you get it. So that's the
Great.
idea.
Okay, I will confer with Michael O'Grady and get the committee language to look at that would achieve that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, that would be good, Abby, and I don't know if you check with Michael and that all work, Michael's O'Grady, and that all works out. Michael's supposed to be on with us tomorrow morning. I don't know what your schedule is, but maybe if you had a couple of minutes, so we could get on to your thing and get it out of the way if it works out, and move forward. So hopefully Michael Schneider, and don't you call O'Grady and bribe him with anything either.
Just spent an hour with him this morning on another subject, so he's done with me.
No, I'm just kidding. And I'm glad you caught that, Michael, because, there's no need of making something where there's question marks. And if we can clean it up and clear it up, it makes, the whole process better.
I appreciate it. Thank
So
you.
the committee, are you all set with having Abby make that change and speaking with Michael and then bringing it back tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Yep. So we're all in agreement then, and Chris?
And then are we tacking on some part of your bill, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, that part I think is, it's a combined 88. We incorporated the other bill right into it, my bill into that bill.
Okay, so this 4-page draft is already got yours grafted in. Okay, sorry, thank you.
And we talked about the other day about why put out 2 bills, so we can do it all, and Abby incorporated them. I was going to use my bill, but because then I'd get credit for passing a bill. Politically that pretty heavy. But no, I thought it blended in better with 88 than going the other way. So very good. Again, thank you, Michael. And did you have another question, Michael, or?
Thanks. If I could, I just wanted to confirm sort of the plan here. Would it be appropriate for, say, Abby to copy me or somehow just let me know where this lands? Yes, no, or otherwise? So, or if you need me tomorrow morning somehow?
Well, she could send you a copy of the rewrite. Are you gonna have time to do that today, Abby?
Yes, and I am available tomorrow morning. I can
Oh,
join.
good. So you could, would you send Michael a copy of your rewrite? And you're always welcome in our room, Michael.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Great. That's a great plan. And thanks, Abby, for that. And I'll look forward. If you have questions, do let me know. Of course, I'm happy to try to help clarify anything.
That should work.
Awesome.
So again, thanks a lot, Michael, and thank you, Abby, for your quick service. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
And we'll see you tomorrow morning with the updated. You could send that to committee members, email it to us committee members as well. When you send Michael that update, or send it to Linda and she'll send it to us.
Sure.
Okay. So
Thank you.
with that, yeah.
Very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Abby. Committee, is there any, that was all I had on the schedule for this morning.
I'm all
I
set.
don't know. Are you guys all set? I'll talk with Brian Campion later today after we get done in approps and stuff. Chris, did you want to sit in on that?
No, I trust you. I would just say from my point of view, rather than fiddling with too many of the details, time is more and more
Yeah.
important. I mean, it's probably, well, who knows what the House will do, but we're not helping ourselves if we get into next week. So to me, that's
No.
an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. And that bill isn't that long right now. And so if we're all set, you guys all got the agenda for tomorrow, and we'll move 88 to discuss that down there as well, and right off early on, because at 10:30 we got that deal with rural Vermont. So we'll get onto that and get this that done. And it'd be nice if we could even move out that 434 bill or get it near done. So with that, thanks, and we'll see you all in the morning, if not later.